All right, thank you for joining us once again here on AntiguaBarbuda.gov.ag. Today our special guest is the Honorable Dr. James Fletcher. He is the Minister of Public Safety, Sustainable Development, Energy, and Science and Technology in St. Lucia. And we also have here with us Minister of Information, Broadcasting, Telecommunications, Science and Technology, Dr. the Honorable Edmond Mansoor. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us, and a special welcome to you, Dr. Fletcher.
Thank you, pleasure.
All right, first of all, how have you been enjoying your stay here in Antigua and Barbuda so far?
Very good. I love Antigua and Barbuda. In fact, I had to explain to the driver who asked me whether this was my first visit. I said absolutely not. I'm a frequent visitor to Antigua and Barbuda. It's a favorite island of mine. So whenever I'm here, I feel like I'm at home. So I've been enjoying it so far. And the Minister has been taking excellent care of me and sharing with me the excellent work that you guys have been doing. So it's been a very good visit so far.
All right. Now, speaking on that note of the excellent work we've been doing, I'm sure in your discussions and deliberations this morning with the Minister, you would have heard a lot about particularly the Connect Antigua Barbuda project. You have questions of that?
Well, I am very impressed. In fact, I didn't just learn about it today. In a previous life, I worked with the OECS Secretariat as Director for Social and Sustainable Development, and under that, part of that portfolio was education. And in looking at trends in education across the region and some of the initiatives that had been taken, the Connect Antigua and Barbuda initiative jumped out at us. And in fact, it was a big part of a presentation I made to OECS heads of government, I think 2.5 years ago, on trends in education and where we in the OECS needed to be going with education, particularly with respect to ICT and the important role that ICT must play in education. And in looking at best practices around the region, the Connect Antigua and Barbuda initiative was one of those that presented itself as a best practice, and it was certainly something that I spoke to our heads of government about, and something that we needed to learn from and see how we could emulate in our other member states. So today has been an opportunity to find out a little bit more about the Connect Antigua and Barbuda initiative, really the back end of it, how it works, how it was conceptualized, and very importantly, the connection between that and the other part of my portfolio, which is telecommunications and ICT, because that really provides the platform for Connect Antigua and Barbuda to work. So that has been quite revealing, and the first-hand impression of Connect Antigua and Barbuda has been even more impressive than the remote impression of it.
Okay, great. Now, Dr. Mansoor, shed some more light on the scope and intention of Dr. Fletcher's visit here today.
Dr. Fletcher's visit here to Antigua is cast in the background of Antigua and Barbuda considering joining the ECTEL arrangement, which is the Eastern Caribbean Telecoms Authority. This treaty-based arrangement came into being, I think, over a decade ago. At that time, Antigua and Barbuda opted not to join. So we have been in discussions pretty much outlining the possibility of what framework we could participate in and what advantages Antigua and Barbuda could lean on in terms of joining ECTEL. So we've had very fruitful discussions this morning. We've certainly looked at the area of how we can improve internet penetration in the OECS, and very importantly, we've had some discussions regarding how we can encourage telecommunications providers to make the OECS sub-region as a single telecommunications space, because the creation of a single telecommunications space has distinct advantages for the citizens and residents of these beautiful countries.
All right, now Dr. Fletcher, your country, St. Lucia, is a signatory to the Eastern Caribbean Telecommunications Authority. Tell us about the roles and functions of this authority and its overall vision. Right,
ECTEL St. Lucia is a signatory, and ECTEL is also headquartered in St. Lucia, and I have the honor right now of being the chairman of ECTEL. The chairmanship rotates. ECTEL has been very instrumental in providing the sort of regulatory framework that has allowed us to have some development in the telecommunications sector that probably would not have been possible without ECTEL. ECTEL came into being at a particular time in some of our member states when their contracts with the then sole provider, Cable and Wireless, coming to an end. So we felt it necessary, given the trends in telecommunications, given the trends in ICT, that it was necessary for us to negotiate a new arrangement with Cable and Wireless it was a bit of a tumultuous start, but I'm very happy that things have settled. ECTEL has proven its worth in, one, not just providing a very sound regulatory framework for telecommunications, but allowing for many of the prices that are charged for telecommunications, for things like interconnection, to go down quite significantly. In fact, I think the cost of interconnection has gone down by 40% as a result of ECTEL's intervention. So we are quite happy with the role that ECTEL has played. It's been very, very useful in causing an increase in the use of mobile phones. For us, really, the next frontier has to be data. We've spent a lot of time and a lot of effort in focusing on the voice side of things. So almost everybody, every one of our residents has a mobile phone, but they use that mobile phone primarily to talk to each other. The mobile phone is increasingly being used as a device to surf the internet, to collect information, particularly among the younger generation. Maybe not people like me, after 40 your eyesight goes and you can't really use an iPhone or a BlackBerry to surf. You probably want to be tethered more to a laptop or a tablet. But the younger generation, they are increasingly using their smartphones and their cell phones to access the internet. So we have to find a way to bring down the cost of broadband, to bring down the cost of mobile internet, so that we can now see the cell phone being used not just as a tool to communicate with each other, but as a tool for a productive tool. Creative industries is a sector that almost every single one of our member states is going into. We see that as the next frontier, particularly for our young people. How can we get them to produce content, video content, and get that uploaded? Has a market value to it. How can they penetrate markets? You can't do that if you have broadband costing prohibitive, if you have the cost of broadband being prohibitive, if you have bandwidth being so limited that it takes 10 hours to upload a video. I mean, certainly that's not what it is right now, but we think that that is where the next frontier has to be for ECTEL, in working with the service providers to ensure that we get the rate of internet penetration up. Antigua and Barbuda, again, is one of those lessons we can learn from. I found out today that the rate of internet penetration in Antigua and Barbuda, I think, is 70-something percent, 75%, 76%. That it certainly is not that in our ECTEL member states. In the country where I come from, St. Lucia, and I think internet connection is somewhere in the vicinity of 25%. But even with that, there's still disconnected parts of St. Lucia. The 2010 census showed that one of our areas, internet connection is as low as 13%. So it ranges between 13% to around 55%. So again, this is something that we have to work on, and this, I think, has to be the next frontier for ECTEL, in working to ensure that internet penetration is much higher and starts approaching the 75 and 100% that Antigua is moving toward. And I think that's, again, one of the areas where we can learn from sharing with each other information and best practices.
An important part of ECTEL's vision and the mission is to promote competition and a fully liberalized telecommunications sector. Elaborate on that. Well,
that is part of its mission, and it has succeeded in doing that to some extent. As you know, there are two main service providers now for voice and telephony, where before there was one. In other areas there are more coming in. So for example, in internet in St. Lucia, there's a lot of interest in other providers coming in. So what ECTEL does is basically provide a sound regulatory environment so that the investor coming in will know that there's a level playing field, that he's not, or is not left to the whims and fancies of the government, or is crowded out because of the monopolistic posture of one dominant service provider. So I think ECTEL has been successful in that area. You also must understand, though, that as a Eastern Caribbean region, the OECS really has a population of just around 660,000. So it's not a huge market to start off with. So while there will be a lot of interest, how many service providers you could get in a market comprising 660,000 people is a little limited. So I think within those confines, ECTEL has done a remarkable job over its 10+ years of existence, and we think that over the coming years and technology, the whole landscape is constantly changing. So what obtained 5-6 years ago is certainly not what obtains now, and will not obtain in another 6 or 7 years, which is why you need a body like ECTEL that has resources, that has access to resources, that can provide support and advice to the member states in the decisions that are made.
All right, Dr. Mansoor, looking ahead, what will be our relation with ECTEL a few years from now?
I think that there is a good window of opportunity for Antigua to look at the merits and demerits, as it were, of joining ECTEL. Obviously, the ECTEL of 2012 is vastly different to the original concept of ECTEL in the year 2000. And we certainly would like to avail ourselves as a country of the professional skill sets that reside within ECTEL, especially from a telecoms regulatory point of view. So that's basically the forecast, I would say, for the next few months. And going down the road, with the explosion in wireless technologies, I see room for greater synergy among all the OECS countries. And in this regard, I have already extended an invitation through Dr. Fletcher for Antigua and Barbuda to host the next meeting of the ECTEL ministers, which takes place, I believe, in the month of October. And I'm hoping that the ministers could come to Antigua at the time of our annual ICT Fest and convene the meeting. We're hoping that Antigua and Barbuda will be granted what I consider an observer status at that time. And the ministers would be able to share ideas and see how better we can progress the OECS sub-region in this particular area.
All right, now Dr. Fletcher, I'll leave the final words with you.
Well, again, I think this meeting for me has been important at two levels. One, as the chairman of ECTEL, to see how we can work more closely with Antigua and Barbuda. And again, apart from the reasons we've spoken about, another compelling reason for that is, as you know, the OECS is now one single economic union. Our heads of government signed on to an OECS economic union, and a very important part of that economic union has to be the role of, so any collaboration between the other 5 independent member states of the OECS and Antigua and Barbuda in a coordinated management of that telecommunication space is absolutely important and necessary for the union. But at the other level, for me, visiting with a colleague minister and learning from someone who has had a lot more time at this and a lot more experience at this, and just picking his brain and just finding out some of the things that he has done and how he's done it, so that we can probably avoid some of the pitfalls and find ourselves in a place where I think we want to be. And this will be, for me, the first of many visits, because, as I said, there are a lot of things going on in Antigua and Barbuda where telecoms and ICT are concerned that I think we need to collaborate more closely on. In particular, and this is a passion that I found out that the minister and I share, the role of ICT in education, particularly at the level of the early childhood education. That is so critical for our development and for us. We cannot look at development if we're not focusing on education, and we do not appreciate the very important role that ICT must play in empowering our citizens, in ensuring that many of the social problems that we're experiencing in our countries right now can be prevented by focusing on early childhood education, that very formative period in the life of a child between birth and 5 years, and how we can ensure that there's greater stimulation and the role that technology can play in ensuring that stimulation takes place. And that's a passion that we both share. So it's been a very good meeting, and I'm looking forward to continued collaboration with the government of Antigua and Barbuda, both bilaterally, St. Lucia and Antigua, and regionally, ECTEL, Antigua and Barbuda.
All right, gentlemen, Dr. Fletcher and Dr. Mansoor, thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you.